Very talented running back.
This is the Smoak Stack, brought to you by SeatGeek. For the best deals on tickets, click the link in the description. Now, let's get to the rundown.
I'm going to have to get used to that. I'm going to have to get used to that stinger. Thank you, Paul. Thank you, Garrett, Craig as well. Alton McCaskill, Colorado running back, used to be at Houston, put up a nice number when he was there. He has entered the portal, as have many in Colorado. And, of course, again, they will fill all of them up. This was one of the biggest names to enter the portal last year, but of course he also was coming off the injury. He's back in the portal. Have no idea where that might end up, or he might end up, but that's the biggest name, at least it appears, since we went off the year yesterday a little after 6 o'clock.
Yeah, and his father has tweeted out that he wasn't going to be the starting running back there, and they wanted him to be RB1 where he goes, and that he needs to be guaranteed that when it happens. So, it sounded a lot of helicopter parent kind of stuff with that, which is troubling, because that's never a good scenario for anybody when you've got the helicopter parent. But if they wanted undisputed running back one somewhere, you could have stayed at Houston. I mean, maybe you got a nice little quick NIL bag when you went to Colorado, but he didn't play a snap in the regular season last year for Colorado, as far as I know, or not that many. And so if he's 100% ready to go, I'm sure he can help somebody. But, yeah, it sounded like they had maybe some unrealistic expectations there at Colorado.
Yeah, I mean, I made a big deal out of this when he transferred to Colorado in the first place. Got a lot of flack from Dion disciples about it, but I feel like a little bit justified, honestly, today in some ways. The Houston spot for him was his and his to take and to as many heights as he wanted to. I don't know if there was ever any, disagreement or whatever with Dana Holgorsen maybe that further prompted that, but it did very much seem like out of the blue. He had gone through spring drills, everything was fine, and then all of a sudden, he's announcing that he's going to Colorado. So it was just very kind of abrupt and strange, and he was coming off the injury too. So it was like a situation where, you're working your way back and you feel like, boom, he's going to be back and he's going to be in top form, and then he's transferring out. And clearly by Holgersen's comments, when that occurred, that was totally unexpected. I think we talked to him a little bit about it at Big 12 Media Days as well. And then, he barely saw the field last year, still, I guess, recuperating and getting his body right. And now this announcement. So, I guess there is some form of helicopter parenting going on. Don't know enough about his personal situation, but I do know that when he was healthy a couple of years ago, he was one of the most fun running backs in college football and one of the most productive guys in college football. And obviously health has played a factor there. But, I'm very curious to see where he lands. I'm most curious because the biggest thing that matters is how healthy is he going to be, and is he going to be able to be that guy we saw a couple of years ago? If so, somebody can get a really good running back. But now I do think that you got to kind of check the boxes a little bit on dad and, expectations and what the McCaskill family might be asking of whatever program that may be. But, to think you're just going to get a guaranteed starting running back spot, I think that's a little unrealistic when you haven't done much of anything in a couple of seasons.
Just under 1,000 yards, 16 touchdowns in 2021, injured in 2022, transferred to Colorado, had 14 carries, 59 yards, no touchdowns, caught a couple of passes, which he's pretty good about coming out of the backfield too, for 19 yards. He now is in the portal and was one of the gems in the name, with his name when he entered the portal a year ago. Some Colorado fans were kind of like, man, they're coming and going, which is really going to be pretty much the MO of Colorado and Dion until maybe he establishes a roster, and maybe that's going to always be in flux like everybody, it seems. And then Colorado athletic director Rick George put this out when someone mentioned the portal and the window, and my goodness, it's been brutal so far. Thank the AGs, the attorney generals that filed the temporary restraining order.
Or I'm just throwing this out here, Rick. Thank the NCAA for continuing to make rules that lose in court. So, yes, you can blame the attorney generals for winning their cases, or you could blame the person who's really responsible, or the entity, which is the NCAA, for not being adaptable fast enough.
A lot of people could be. It's a big circle of and.
Yeah,
why?
I mean, it's just going to be people pointing fingers all over the place. I do think, and I think this is the case in most walks of life, that before you get to like the extreme French Revolution scenario we've got going on in college football right now or in other things, if you had just negotiated or adapted as things went on, it would not be this crazy right now. When you think about trying to make players employees, what they were asking for was like $2,000 a month, 15 years ago. And they're like, oh, bro, $2,000 a month. That's disgusting.
That's
what
going
are
to
you
run us
talking
out
about?
of business.
Yeah, I'd love to talk to just the greediest of the greedy when it comes to these college football leaders of those who would rather trade off, all the money they made off the backs of these players as they stretched it out as long as they possibly could, or if they could go back and wave a magic wand, would they have given up a little bit of that to have more of it moving forward? Because they're sacrificing a lot of money by waiting as long as they did. But was that the trade-off? You made so much while you could that you're okay enough that, okay, we'll have to give them a little bit. You know what I'm saying there?
Absolutely.
But if you could go back in time and say, hey, let's just offer them $500 a month, and that could have been the norm nowadays. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely. It might have slowed down a lot. Like the stipend that they now get that's worth whatever their scholarship
They've
might be.
been getting that for a while now at this point. But yeah.
But I mean, 20 years ago, I think so. And then even then, you would still have some lawsuits or whatever. And that's, speaking of which, how about this one? Virginia.
Well, I want to touch on Colorado for just a second with Rick George. So Alton McCaskill is going to do what if the AG had not filed the temporary restraining order? He's going to sit there and be miserable and have his daddy talking about how he's not the starting running back. And Cormani McLean's going to do what? Sit there and not work hard and not do what he's supposed to be doing as a star player and a supposed future NFL guy. And those are the two high-profile names that we know more of, but there's some of that in these transfers. So, yeah, it sounds like complaining, especially when you were a part of the bringing in of Dion and then basically talking about how you were going to flip the college football world on its head and you were going to, open for business and Colorado's going to bring in all these guys and you had no problem taking from others, but now you want to kind of shift the blame, I guess. I think that rings hollow for a lot of people. So if I was Rick George, I'd probably take that comment back.
This is not to say that Colorado won't refill the cupboard.
Of course.
They probably will and might even bring in more talent, which they have in some ways, but you just wonder about how can you do this every year?
Self-awareness level 0 for Rick George as far as that comment goes. Yeah.
All right, so Virginia law is now going to allow schools to pay athletes for NIL. Now, you may go, well, wait a minute, they can do that anyway. Schools in Virginia will be allowed to directly sign athletes to NIL deals starting July 1st, thanks to a new state law. This could be a catalyst for significant changes the NCAA members have thus far been unwilling to make. And then he goes on, you can see the rest of the story. Now, let's go to Dan Murphy, a couple of tweets I also gave you, Garrett, thank you. Charlie Baker, the NCAA president, has pushed for schools to be able to pay athletes directly, but the schools who actually make the rules have balked at bringing the athletic marketplace inside the department for their control. Why? They're worried it gets too close to employment and will be used against them in federal or NL National Labor Relations Board cases. The law specifically says athletes aren't employees, but that won't stop attorneys from saying the schools are just playing a matter of semantics to avoid the employment word.
Yeah, again, I wish the NCAA, Charlie Baker should know this because he's a lawmaker. That's what he was. Why don't, it's done across everywhere where you see something that works for somebody and you take the best parts of all those things and then you make a thing that works for you. We didn't invent YouTube. We've had some original ideas. Other people have had ideas that we have said, okay, we can make something like that work for us. And then you move on and you say it's not like, you're stealing song lyrics or something like that. This is not that. So if Virginia has a law that has some good parts and then California has one and Florida and Texas and Alabama and Georgia, take those laws, write up a rule, and make that the rule.
All right. Well, here's one of the things and why Amanda's going to join us here in a moment, Kristovich. Here's a bunch of tweets from the NCAA from yesterday evening. I'm not reading them all, but this is one after another about the rules The rules about student athletes, NIL opportunities, how much can they make before they have to report it? That's good, Garrett. Amanda Kristovich today came back with a tweet that said, just a friendly reminder, the NCAA's latest proposed rule changes around the transfer portal are not new. Like, not even news. A federal court decision forced those exact changes. It doesn't matter what the rules the NCAA rewrites now. The law is clear.
Well, they like to make it seem like they're the ones who thought this up. If you remember during March Madness, and it was I saw this commercial the first time during the selection show, which was the NCAA. There's more opportunity now than ever. It's the best time ever to be a student athlete. This is like all these great things. And it was like they came up with it. Like the McRib or some crap, like, oh man, it's no better time, or it was like a car commercial, like no better time to get yourself a Dodge Ram than right now with all these incentives. Well, look, to credit Dodge, they came up with that incentive. The NCAA came up with none of this. They were forced into it, and now they're saying, like, man, we've got some great ideas.
In other words, the poop has hit the ground. Now they're trying to cover it up. With bottom line, they're trying to rewrite the law or the rules when those rules have already been forced upon them.
They're just trying to stall like they've done their entire history until they're forced to do something.
Yeah.
I'm so tired of the NIL back and forth. I know it's a part of what we cover, and it's an important part in many ways because it's, one of the big pillars of the entire industry right now. But, man, this law back and forth, legal battle, NCAA stalling individual state rules when it comes to NIL, God, I wish we could get on the other side of this thing. And we know what the answer is, and it's the answer that was the answer the last time I talked about this and the time before and the time before. And the answer is what they're trying to prevent from happening, which is full unemployment for these student athletes. So, that's right the way that she said it, of this is not new news. They were forced into it, but they're trying to spin it as though like, oh, look at what we did. It's like, yeah, with a gun to your head and with well, there's no choice even. Like, you have no choice. The law says it. But, yeah, I mean, it's just more of the same. And I just wonder, like, how long, because I don't get into the weeds on the legal stuff. There are a lot of other smart people that get into that and love it and are able to translate it in a way that makes sense for dum-dums like me. But I just like, how long does this drag out until you get to a point? And is that point basically – you have to have the Super League created just to simply create something to move on from all of this. You know what I mean? Because how else does it ever stop the never-ending NIL rules saga, or just replace NIL with any other thing that involves paying athletes money? And it's simply a strategy, the NCAA, of really their entire history. Let's not address something until we're absolutely forced to. Then let's put up a lame fight that we know we're not going to win until we clearly lose in the court of law. And then we'll act as though it's a game-changing evolution of the industry and we're part of the brain trust of it, when in reality, you're doing everything you can to keep it in the way that it was, but you're being forced slowly but surely through each and every court loss to loosen your grip on the college sports athletes and all that comes with that. So, yeah, it's crazy how long this has been going on.
Stephen Heindel, I hope I got that right, Stephen. Amanda Kristovich, who's going to join us, does an amazing job with Front Office Sports.
Yeah.
Love her perspective. She'll join us here in about a little over an hour at 4:30. Max Olson in about 10 minutes.
And she's one of those people I'm referring to that can break it down in a way that helps me understand it and follow along with it a lot better than reading like the actual court stuff, because that's not me.
Yeah. Tell me like I'm five.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, explain like I'm five.
Yeah,
tell me like I'm five.
Especially me. Now, speaking of which, some of you are like frothing at the mouth. That's another cookie cake. We're big into cookie cakes. We do everything about numbers of shows, birthdays, etc.
If there was ever a sponsor need,
I know.
It was the American Cookie Cake.
I talked to the guy. That's one of those franchises that, But Paul's birthday is not today. So he can look at it, cannot touch it, cannot eat it. Tomorrow is his birthday, but he's not going to be here tomorrow. So I got the cookie cake. And almost like full throttle panic when I was going to order it today. And I'm like, oh, my God, he's going to be out of town. He's leaving to have a 3-day weekend. And so I brought it to the studio today.
Well,
he can have it.
Much.
No, we're going to eat it when you get back on Monday.
Would you leave it there and hope
we're not
texture of a potato chip on Monday.
Have you ever had a baked potato and you leave it, you don't eat it, and like 3 or 4 days into it, it gets that little shrivelly,
Yeah.
like almost that. We're going to have pieces of that here pretty soon. Garrett Ross runs the mothership. Jack McKenzie, Emery Winter, all of us in what we do every day. We appreciate you today being with us on 365 Sports. If you haven't already, please punch that like button. And then if you don't mind, spread the word at your convenience. Paul is not. What are you now?
I'll be 44 tomorrow.
Henry Aaron. Reggie Jackson.
44. I still have
Leroy
8
Kelly?
hours and 21 minutes of being 43.
God almighty, I just thought you turned 40.
In 2020 I did. But it's hard to
Lots
remember
happened
birthdays
since
that year.
2020. Yeah, lots happened since 2020. There's like we're in a whole second era. Yeah.
Craig just turned 40 back in March.
No, I didn't.
I turned
That's the-
65 on May 2nd,
Yeah.
and Paul tomorrow will turn the double 44. So one of the best numbers in sports and pro sports, and I'm missing some as well at the 44 level. All right, there's also this nugget from Congress and also the networks. A pair of congressmen, front office sports, demanding answers on the streaming joint venture with all of these networks, which is 4 months away from its intended debut. Within the questions is a concern that will create a series of negative effects across the industry.
It's almost as like letting the 3 biggest corporations join together and hoard things all to themselves is bad for competition in business. I don't know. I'm not an economist. I'm just a person who took economics in high school, and that's one of the things that we learned.
Yeah.
So
Is this a monopoly?
yeah, I mean, again, you're looking at more monopolizing. And here's the other thing that scares me about companies like this coming together. ESPN and Fox in particular, in that right now there's no motivation for them to join together. Same with Warner Brothers, but eventually, all these companies like ooze together and then become this amalgamation of something, and then you don't even realize that it's this gigantic conglomerate of just things. And I just don't think it's good. I think it's good that, we can at least try to look into these things. I don't know how effective this is going to be, but yeah, there'll be negative things across the industry. The industry nickname for this is Spoolu, which is Sports Hulu. So yeah, they're calling it Spoolu right now, which the name I hope sticks. It's not going to. It's going to be something plus or,
It's gonna be something plus, something X, something generic like that. But Spoolu's kind of a funny name for it. There's a lot of questions about this. I know when it was first announced, we were all like head spinning. What in the world is this? Is this even allowed? Is this possible? Although it did seem like maybe a saving grace for some of those who are worried about getting locked out of exposure moving forward. The Big 12, for example, or an ACC, or anybody not named the SEC or the Big 10. But I think the people with the biggest amount of questions and the big problem you have initially is the leagues themselves. Like, I know that the first thought was the NFL is going to just allow you to just stream their games, and how is that going to work exactly when they have all these multiple broadcast deals? And I would imagine that would be the same question for a Big Ten when they've got, multiple network affiliations and so on. So, yeah, there's just a lot of unknown. This was just sort of put out there like a bomb that we didn't even know was coming, and it just detonated, and then it's like react to it. But then once the dust settles, you realize, what even was that? Like, that there was no real explosion. It was just kind of a dud, and then you let the smoke clear, and it's like, I don't even know what that was supposed to be. It wasn't the major, shockwave that changed the landscape. It's very much just a big old question mark right now, and the leagues themselves are amongst the ones with the biggest questions on how they would, be involved and how that would work. There's also lawyers as well, clearly involved, as you mentioned. There's a lot to clear up here, and there was some intervention needed as far as trying to determine exactly what this is going to look like and how it's going to operate. But yeah, I don't have high hopes for us seeing this right around the corner. It seems like there are a lot of hurdles to cross before we get into this one-stop shop for sports.
By the way, I agree with you on that. There's a lot more to kind of digest here. Baylor and like 5 or 6 other programs within the Big 12 are not going to stream or have their spring game. Baylor's not even having a spring game, but more of a practice, et cetera, 7-on-7. Texas is thinking about theirs and maybe having to move it, like cancel it because of weather. Texas Tech was going to play theirs in Midland because of their stadium being under construction. They've canceled that game Saturday afternoon because of impending strong, severe thunderstorms up in the Panhandle area, or in West Texas, so they'll have it inside their indoor. So that's a game will not be seen either. At least I'm sure there'll be a highlight package, but not actually streaming or on TV.
I know fans are bummed about this because they like to go and see any kind of event or, shoulder pads on shoulder pads thing they can. But ultimately, this is not that much of a loss,
No, it's not. It's nice.
To the football world.
Might be something that's fading away. I don't know.
I do feel. Am I the only one that feels like the spring game's kind of fading?
That's what I'm saying. That's exactly. Yeah, I think it's kind of changing how people look at it, coaches and or even athletic departments.
Yeah, we had like a write up on the spring and what's expected. It's for Baylor. But it's just going to be a practice. Like there's not even I don't know that we're going to be able to decide much based on what we see on Saturday. The coaches have had 15 practices to decide if DeQuan Finn or Sawyer Robertson should be the starting quarterback, for example, but. Yeah, I mean, for Baylor, it's going to be a glorified practice. Not even glorified. It's going to be a practice to close it out rather than a spring game. You mentioned Texas, either not having or might not have it. So, yeah, I don't know. I just get the feeling that that's kind of gotten overshadowed by the transfer portal and player movement. And, you have players playing in the spring game that are gone 2 days later. So it's just a different era, it feels like.
You were out when we discussed some of the reasons why. I